Matt, how much time do you spend qualifying buyers?
Kevin, we spend quite a lot of time going and digging deep with really what the needs are of the buyer. I think so much time's wasted with taking people to inspections that haven't got their finance arranged, not even really sure what they want to buy. So we do spend a lot of time with these buyers. I've got a couple of buyer managers within my team that go and deal with those buyers directly. So they'll follow up from the open home, find out what they're looking for, whether they've got their finance approved. We've got in-house finance brokers, which we can send the details across to. They'll come back to us and say, yeah, look, they're ready to purchase. And just simply asking the question, are you ready to buy?
So how many questions would you go through to get that qualifying process right?
First and foremost, we ask, did you like the property? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And then we just ask the question, okay, well, and I think this is the most relative question, which a lot of agents don't ask, is, okay, well, do you want to buy it?
What sort of dialogue do you use to get people to commit to that buying process, Matt?
So I think what buyers really want to know is, one, that the owners are committed to sell it, and two, that it's going to represent good value. So what we do, we spend a lot of time with buyers educating. So all of my open for inspections, I'll hand out a recent list of comparable sales. We send the buyers through. Even recently, when stock's been quite tight and we've wanted to process our stock a little quicker, I take buyers, all the hot buyers in our car, drive them around, show them the sales, show them the difference between the properties and try and justify the value of the property. So once they're there and they've made a decision on that's the property that they want, it's just trying to represent that property is good value.
How do you do that?
Well,
because a lot of your properties are auction properties.
A lot of them are auction.
Yeah, so how do you demonstrate that when you can't talk price?
Recent sales. We sort of throw in 5 or 6 or 7 maybe recent sales, a couple that are higher, a couple that are lower, and then just sell the motivation that the seller's really committed to sell it, that they're moving on to something else, or tell the story of what they want. But with all the properties that we have at the moment, there is a genuine story behind these people. We don't take on unrealistic sellers. So a lot of the people that go to auction and spend big money on marketing in our marketplace are committed sellers. So we just keep telling that story, and I think it's easy for the buyers to commit then.
So when you get a buyer to auction, they've got an understanding about the value in their mind that you may have helped them, guide them to that. Sure. You get to the point where you maybe need another $10,000 out of them on the floor. What's the dialogue you use there?
Well, there's one thing. Say, for example, if we have a reserve of, say, $1 million, and we've got the buyer at 990 and no one else is bidding, what I'll do is I'll go and talk to the buyer, to the highest bidder, and say, look, you're the highest bidder at the moment. Unfortunately, it's not enough to get the property on the market. Can I ask you a question? Would you pay 1.2?
So you go over the reserve?
Go well over. So it's far easier to ask for more and to get a little increase than to ask for what you want and then not increase at all. So we generally go over and then step them down. So we say 1.2, they generally say go away. We go, okay, well, surely to God you'd see value at 115. They say no, and it's like, well, how close to that can you get? And sometimes they might say, okay, well, we'll give you 1.1 if you go away, or we'll give you $1 million, and then that sort of bridges that gap.
Got the deal. Right?
Yeah.
So at what point do you go back to the seller and get them to try and bring the reserve down?
Well, usually we try and smash the seller's expectation first. We try and negotiate the price above their reserve and then go back to them. We'll never disclose a reserve to a buyer, or unless it's on the market. And we usually try and, whatever the seller wants, it's not our job to get them what they want. It's our job to get them as much as we possibly can in the market and smash their expectations. So we generally, even if we're going in an auction forum, we're over the reserve, well, we'll disclose it's on the market when it's in the best interest for the seller.
Matt, when we have a buyer's market, how do you get the buyer to commit? Because they're convinced that they're the ones who've got the power.
Yeah, sure. Well, at the moment, thankfully, we're in a bit of a seller's market in our marketplace and there's not much stock. But in a buyer's market, realistically, to differentiate yourself and your product and your property that you're selling to the rest of the market is you've just got to show that it represents great value. One other thing we sort of try and tap into is that it's the right lifestyle for them, that it's going to sit well for what they want, and you just have to do that through the qualification process. I think at the end of the day, if there's 50 properties on the market and only 5 or 6 buyers in there, realistically it's going to be the value that it comes down to. Yeah. So it's promoting that it represents really good value, and I think persistence. I think the deal dies when the agent gives up. And if agents in those sorts of marketplaces are so destined on showing a buyer one property, and then as soon as they say, oh, I didn't like that house because of that reason, they'll just take that buyer to the next property, and they'll just give them too many choices. Our job as agents is to sell that property and exhaust every single opportunity we can in relation to whatever the objections are with the property and to overcome them. So I think overcoming every objection that they have and presenting that it represents good value, I think that's the only way to.
Hello once again and welcome to the show. And as we go to air, things are looking pretty bright. In fact, clearance rates rise and Sydney tops Melbourne. Geoff White back from CoreLogic in just a moment to give us all the details.
Did you know you can save up to 70% on your staff costs by outsourcing the low-value, repeatable tasks so your team can focus on growing your business? Beepo is an outsourcing provider focused on the real estate industry. With an English-speaking, tertiary qualified and fully trained team in the Philippines, Beepo will give your business the boost it needs to start growing and returning value to you. For more information, visit beepo.com.au.
Hello once again, Geoff White from CoreLogic. How are you, mate?
Hello, Kevin. How are you going?
Good. Wasn't it some good results, maybe with the exception of probably Brisbane. We'll talk about that in more detail. But, gee, clearance rate out of Sydney, let's bring those up. That looks pretty good.
Yeah, it certainly is. Sydney with 66.6 from 535 auctions. So if you were to consider, these are preliminary, so we know that they may come back by the time of the final clearance rate. But assuming that they didn't, that's probably the highest clearance rate Sydney's seen for nearly a year. So, but I still say that'll come back. So, good result, and well ahead of Melbourne if you consider, nearly 6% higher. Melbourne with 60.8 from 678 auctions, still very good because it's in the, above the 60 range, and which has led to a weighted average higher than what we probably would have anticipated of 58.8 from 1472. So, as you pointed out, Brisbane a bit on the light side this week, but that can change up and down from week to week, as you know.
It could be number reported too, because only about 50% of them, I think, reported.
Correct.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So we just don't know. It may edge up with a bit more reporting this week. Adelaide 43.5, a bit on the light side with numbers there, 59 auctions. Perth obviously 25% from 53. Canberra, which we noted was under 50 last week, now above 50 this week, 54.1 from 53, so back into the 50s for Canberra. So a good weighted average there, Kevin, right across the country.
Yeah, and I think the Canberra result's going to be an interesting one to watch in the next few weeks as we go into that federal election. It seems to be a market that is very much impacted by elections.
Yeah, well, given a lot of the employment opportunities around Canberra relate to the government type jobs and things, so. Yeah, it's the talk of the town, no doubt. So it will have an impact, yes, I'm sure. So we'll see how we go in the next couple of weeks.
Indeed, we will. We'll bring up the graphics now for the houses and houses and units. Nothing really to report there, except in Sydney there is still a big separation between houses and units. Yeah,
that's very interesting. If you pick the two major capital cities there, Sydney and Melbourne. Sydney with houses 69%, whereas units 61.9. Compared to Melbourne, houses is lower than units. So houses, 2% lower, 60.1, units 62.2. So bit of a flip there. But houses in Sydney at 69%. Strength of the market in Sydney, clearly the house market there. Yes.
You can't really say that that's the separation of numbers of houses and units, because they're fairly similar if you look, 50% units to houses in both Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah, that's right. So. Yeah, exactly. So you're right, the numbers there, but it obviously, there's a lot more units that sell that don't even go to auction. So, and we know that. The same goes for houses. The auction market is certainly not the majority of the market, but it's just interesting because I think last week we were talking closer numbers, whereas this week in Sydney particularly, more of a gap between units and houses.
Okay, well, on the back of a pretty good result out of Sydney, preliminary result, let's have a look at the Sydney sub-regions. Gee, some crackers in there. Inner West looks 78.6%. Even North Sydney and Hornsby.
Yeah, you look at that and what catches your eye for me is just looking at the numbers, and you see those two 78.6s, Inner West, North Sydney, Hornsby, and pretty reasonable numbers in certainly in North Sydney and Hornsby, 81 auctions and 45 in the Inner West. So very much that would have contributed very much to the higher overall Sydney clearance rate.
Absolutely.
And then you look at the other 60s as well, strength in the inner southwest at 69.4, still 65 auctions. City and inner south, 65.1 from 58. So, yeah, there's only one sub-region in that list there, Kevin, below 50, and that's the Central Coast with 22 auctions, 46.2. So, a pretty good cross-section across those sub-regions in Sydney. Very well done.
Top sale out of Sydney coming from Richardson and Wrench, 2.78 million. 27A Kingsland Road at Strathfield. This one's 4-bedroom on the Golden Mile, and it's on a corner too. So pretty good pickup at that price, I would think. 696 square metres.
Yeah, exactly. The position in the corner block, I think, is the major attraction there. I mean, the house. Obviously not original. It's had work done over the years and very livable and that sort of thing. But the presentation, the size of the allotment, and being on that corner would be the major attraction there. A great result. A lot of accommodation. When you think 4-bed master bed with ensuite and all of that, so ducted heating and aircon and blah blah blah. So pretty good property as well, but a good result and great location. Well done to the guys at Richardson and Wrench,
Indeed, and we'll take you to Melbourne now, look at the sub-regions, but before we do, just to tell you that we will be telling you about a 6 apartment block that sold under the hammer over the weekend. We'll tell you about that in a moment. Let's firstly have a look at the sub-regions in Melbourne. Inner South holding up the numbers there, but there are some disappointing numbers, aren't there?
Yeah, although, Kevin, we've had more below 50 before. So I'm saying, Mornington Peninsula is the only one below 50 with 46.2, 18 auctions. The rest are above 50. And we've seen the inner areas, the inner south, obviously leading the way at 72.6 from 88. And the higher volume area of inner Melbourne with 143 auctions with 63.1. That's why Melbourne's fared a bit better this week than the previous week. So there's more 60s there, level of consistency, and even the West. We've been watching that one there. A couple of weeks ago was below 50. Last week didn't do too bad, and there's now on these preliminary numbers top 60 at 60.7 from 81. So I think that's a pretty good outcome for Melbourne, and you have to say it's broad. Whether you're looking from the outer east right through to the inner areas, there's not a huge variance of clearance rate. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes over the next couple of weeks, and if it holds, in that even the mid to high 50s, you'd have to say Melbourne is showing some return to a better, more balanced market.
Yeah, I think we've got to be careful, haven't we, Geoff? Hearing my comment there about how disappointing those Melbourne results are, but gee, when you can pull in results around the 60%, even 70%, that's a pretty good go when you consider that. I think Open List has a list to sell ratio of somewhere around 10%, and even exclusive listings, you're lucky if you can get a 50 to 55% success rate. So we shouldn't be drawn too much on those 80s and 90% results, which were really off the chart.
Yeah, unsustainable, Kevin, really. And what we want is sustainability in the auction market and the real estate market overall. And when you start to see these sorts of clearance rates, and yes, they'll come back a bit between finals, but if they were hovering at around this, you'd have to say that's a pretty good market to be either buying or selling in, knowing you're not probably going to be overpaying because the market's not extremely buoyant. But if you're a vendor, you've got some great opportunities, and there's plenty of buyers. And out and about yesterday a little bit, I could see, multiple bidders and quite a few options, Kevin. So, I think the buyers are certainly there and see the opportunities.
Yeah, and very good point. Okay, we'll take you to the top Melbourne sale. As I said a few moments ago, this is a block of units, 1 to 6 at 289 Mansfield Street at Thornbury.
Yep.
Block of 6 units, 2.2 million, 8 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms. We can draw from that at least 2 of them would be 2-bedders, you'd think. 4 1-bedders and 2 2-bedders, probably. I'm only assuming that.
Yes.
Bill and Theo selling this one from Love & Co. Well done, guys. Returns about $86,000 a year, which is, I did a quick calculation, about a 4% gross return. Not too bad.
Yeah, I did the same numbers exactly.
Did you? What did you come up with, mate? Did you come up with that?
3.9 there, Kevin.
Yeah. I tend to round things out on the upside. I'm, typical salesperson. So
don't overquote it.
No.
Yes, no, a good return. I didn't quite get the mix of how many 1s and 2s. It's not quite clear on that. But if you were to divide them out and assuming they were even, $366,000 each. And there's strata titles, so they're already separately titled.
Yes,
so
yes.
this gives the buyer the opportunity to obviously retain them as a rental investment or renovate them and resell. There's a very good size allotment as well, and it has 2 street frontages. So there's a street frontage from the back, which is good for car accommodation, etc. Typical brown brick rental type building, but the beauty has been that these are on separate titles, and that saves a lot of hassle when you're wanting to resell them if you are down the track. So. Great job, Bill and Theo from Love & Co. Good result, and a happy buyer, I'm sure, there.
Shannon Harvey from Place Billimba recording the top sale out of Brisbane, 102 Belgrave Street at Morningside, $1,150,000. This one was sold prior to auction, 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 2-car on 405 square metres. Nice house, this. Very traditional for the area too.
Yeah, it is, and very well presented as well, and that's certainly a highlight. It's immaculate throughout. A lot of luxury comfort in this home over a dual level, and a lot of accommodation as well. And it's amazing how many properties we see that are in the top ones we talk about, Kevin, that have pools. This is another one with a pool as well. A terrific home, and not far from the CBD, only about 5 k's away, and a lot of transport and infrastructure around where this property is located. So, well done to the guys at Place and Shannon. A terrific result there,
Shannon Harvey, she's a great operator. Hey, Andrew Welch selling from LJ Hooker, selling the top property in South Australia. A bit of a different home, this one. You'd have to be a lover of timber when we take you inside this one. The owner, been there since 1954, unfortunately a deceased estate, so we feel, great sympathy for that person. But Andrew Welch, 769 square metres. This would have to be a redevelopment site, I would think. It's in a very, very good area of Adelaide as well.
Yeah, it is, and you're quite right. It was interesting. The main photo on the website doesn't show much. It's more focused on the land, and then you go through the photos. You're quite right. There's a lot of timber. It's amazing the history when you look through some of these properties, and it's actually in pretty good condition.
It is.
And I think it says in the description here the home built pre-1877. So.
Wow.
Goodness, yeah, I know, very, but it's same owner since 1954. So this one obviously lends itself to redevelopment, the potential there to do something with the site. It also, being on a corner allotment, gives it that opportunity to do something better with the site, and no doubt that's what the buyers are thinking of. So a good result there, Andrew. And an interesting property to look at, and quite different to what we generally talk about on these Mondays there, Kevin. Yeah.
Indeed, yeah. Okay, we'll follow with interest what happens with those clearance rates. And as Geoff has predicted, they are likely to fall just a little bit, but hopefully they'll still hold up fairly high. We'll come back with you on Friday and give you the final results, and we'll have a look at what's coming up in the week ahead. Geoff, all the best, my friend, and look forward to talking to you on Friday.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin, and enjoy the week. All the best.
Evening, Clara. Home, please.
David, what's on your mind?
I was just thinking of a different time is all. It was a time when I used to sit up there, you know. Driving wasn't just about being taken from place to place, but going somewhere. Feeling something along the way.
Please, David, you should relax.
I'm afraid that's just the problem.
David, where are you going? David? David?